Outside reporters clamored for interviews and well-wishers offered hugs and congratulations, but Marcus remained focused on the bigger picture. This victory wasn't just for him, it was for every young person unfairly judged for the color of their skin, for every family torn apart by systemic injustice. As he stepped into the sunlight hand in hand with Evelyn, Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. But for now he allowed himself to bask in the triumph of truth vindicated and justice served. The aftermath of the trial rippled through Hopeville like waves crashing against the shore, reshaping perceptions and challenging long-held beliefs. News outlets seized upon the story, dubbing it "The Boy Who Stood Up," and broadcasting Marcus's impassioned closing statement nationwide. Social media erupted with hashtags like "See Me, Not My Skin" and "Justice for Marcus," sparking conversations about racial profiling, systemic bias, and the urgent need for reform within law enforcement. For many, Marcus became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that courage could pierce even the darkest clouds of prejudice. Within the community, reactions varied widely, reflecting the complex tapestry of opinions and experiences that defined Hopeville. Some residents rallied around Marcus, organizing fundraisers to support his education and future aspirations. Local businesses displayed signs proclaiming solidarity with messages such as "We believe in you, Marcus," while schools incorporated discussions about equity and empathy into their curricula, inspired by his unwavering integrity. Teachers marveled at how his ordeal had galvanized students, encouraging them to speak out against injustice and stand up for one another. Yet not everyone welcomed the shift. A vocal minority clung stubbornly to skepticism, dismissing Marcus's exoneration as a fluke or accusing him of manipulating public sympathy. These voices, though fewer in number, underscored the deep-rooted resistance to change that still lingered in corners of the town. Tensions occasionally flared, particularly during heated debates at city council meetings, where proposals aimed at implementing anti-bias training for police officers faced fierce opposition. Progress was slow and uneven, but undeniable. Detective Harris nodded, jotting something down without looking up. "And what time did you leave school?" "Around 3:15, Marcus replied, his voice steadier now, fueled by determination to prove his innocence. "I walked straight home like I always do. I stopped by Miller's corner store because I needed to grab a snack, but I didn't go inside." Harris raised an eyebrow, studying Marcus intently. "So you admit you were near the store?" "Yes, but nothing," Harris interrupted, leaning forward slightly. "Witnesses saw someone matching your description hanging around the area right before the robbery happened. Care to explain that?" Anger bubbled beneath Marcus's surface, threatening to spill over, but he forced himself to remain composed. "I wasn't hanging around, I was just walking past like I said. Ask my teacher, Ms. Alvarez. She'll tell you I was in class until dismissal." The detective scribbled another note, then leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Even if that checks out, it doesn't explain why you ran when Officer Daniels approached you." "I didn't run," Marcus exclaimed, his voice rising involuntarily. "I stopped when he told me to. Why would I run if I didn't do anything wrong?" Harris studied him for a long moment, his gaze piercing as though trying to unravel the truth hidden behind Marcus's wide, frightened eyes. Finally, he sighed, standing up and pocketing his notepad. "We'll verify your alibi," he said curtly. "But don't think this is over." Left alone once more, Marcus buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by exhaustion and despair. The accusations swirled relentlessly in his mind, each one chipping away at his confidence. Was this really happening? Could they honestly believe he was capable of stealing? The injustice of it all gnawed at him, relentless and suffocating. Hours later, when Evelyn finally arrived, her presence brought a flicker of relief to Marcus's weary soul. Her usually warm eyes were clouded with worry, but she embraced him fiercely, whispering reassurances that everything would be okay. Together, they listened as Officer Daniels outlined the charges against him, emphasizing the need for formal proceedings, given the severity of the allegations. Though Evelyn argued passionately for her grandson's release, citing his exemplary behavior and lack of prior trouble, the officers remained unmoved, citing procedure and evidence, or rather the lack thereof, as justification for keeping him detained overnight. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Marcus found himself seated in a holding cell alongside two other teenagers, their hardened expressions a stark contrast to his own vulnerability. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, surrounded by individuals who likely had committed crimes, while he, an innocent boy, was treated as though guilt was already etched into his very being. Each clang of the cell door, each indifferent glance from passing officers reinforced the painful realization that his identity as a black youth carried assumptions he couldn't escape. Despite the bleakness of his surroundings, Marcus clung to fragments of hope. His grandmother's unwavering belief in him bolstered his resolve, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this fight. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth would eventually surface, but the road ahead promised to be fraught with obstacles designed not only to test his innocence, but also his spirit. But the emotional crescendo didn't end there. As the judge dismissed the case, Marcus turned to address Officer Daniels and Detective Harris, who stood stiffly near the exit. Though anger still simmered beneath the surface, Marcus chose compassion over resentment. "I forgive you," he said softly, his voice carrying across the now silent courtroom. "I know you were just doing your jobs, but I hope this teaches you something too. Don't assume someone is guilty because of how they look. Take the time to really see them." For a brief moment, Daniels and Harris exchanged uneasy glances, their stoic facades faltering under the weight of Marcus's grace. Then, without another word, they exited the courtroom, leaving behind a stunned audience grappling with the profound impact of what had transpired. Outside, reporters clamored for interviews and well-wishers offered hugs and congratulations, but Marcus remained focused on the bigger picture. This victory wasn't just for him, it was for every young person unfairly judged for the color of their skin, for every family torn apart by systemic injustice. As he stepped into the sunlight hand in hand with Evelyn, Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. But for now he allowed himself to bask in the triumph of truth vindicated and justice served. The aftermath of the trial rippled through Hopeville like waves crashing against the shore, reshaping perceptions and challenging long-held beliefs. News outlets seized upon the story, dubbing it "The Boy Who Stood Up," and broadcasting Marcus's impassioned closing statement nationwide. Social media erupted with hashtags like "See Me, Not My Skin" and "Justice for Marcus," sparking conversations about racial profiling, systemic bias, and the urgent need for reform within law enforcement. For many, Marcus became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that courage could pierce even the darkest clouds of prejudice. Within the community, reactions varied widely, reflecting the complex tapestry of opinions and experiences that defined Hopeville. Some residents rallied around Marcus, organizing fundraisers to support his education and future aspirations. Local businesses displayed signs proclaiming solidarity with messages such as "We believe in you, Marcus," while schools incorporated discussions about equity and empathy into their curricula, inspired by his unwavering integrity. Teachers marveled at how his ordeal had galvanized students, encouraging them to speak out against injustice and stand up for one another. Yet not everyone welcomed the shift. A vocal minority clung stubbornly to skepticism, dismissing Marcus's exoneration as a fluke or accusing him of manipulating public sympathy. These voices, though fewer in number, underscored the deep-rooted resistance to change that still lingered in corners of the town. Tensions occasionally flared, particularly during heated debates at city council meetings, where proposals aimed at implementing anti-bias training for police officers faced fierce opposition. Progress was slow and uneven, but undeniable. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Marcus sat beside his public defender, Mr. Thompson, a wiry man with thinning hair and glasses perched precariously on his nose. Despite his unassuming appearance, Mr. Thompson exuded a quiet confidence that offered Marcus some measure of reassurance. Across the aisle sat Officer Daniels, flanked by Detective Harris, both looking stern and resolute. The prosecutor, Ms. Carter, a sharp-dressed woman with an authoritative demeanor, wasted no time laying out her case, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, pacing slowly in front of the panel. Today we are here to address a crime that strikes at the very heart of our community, a brazen act of theft committed in broad daylight. The evidence against the defendant is compelling. Witnesses placed him near the scene of the crime, dressed in clothing matching the description provided by the victim. Furthermore, his refusal to cooperate fully with law enforcement raises serious questions about his intent. Ms. Carter gestured dramatically toward a grainy surveillance photo displayed on a screen behind her. This image shows a figure wearing a red hoodie identical to the one confiscated from the defendant. While the face is obscured, the posture and build align closely with those of the accused. She paused, letting the implication sink in before continuing. We cannot ignore these facts, nor can we dismiss the possibility that this young man knowingly participated in criminal activity. Justice demands accountability. As Ms. Carter concluded her opening statement, Marcus felt a wave of nausea wash over him. The prosecutor's words painted him as guilty beyond doubt, twisting circumstantial evidence into irrefutable proof. He glanced nervously at Mr. Thompson, who gave him a reassuring nod, urging him to stay calm. When it was their turn, Mr. Thompson rose to his feet, adjusting his tie as he addressed the jury. "Members of the jury," he began, his tone measured yet impassioned. "What you have heard thus far is not evidence. It is conjecture, built upon assumptions and biases. My client Marcus Johnson is a 13-year-old boy with no prior record, a student praised by his teachers and loved by his community. To suggest that he is capable of such a crime based solely on proximity and clothing is not only reckless, but unjust." He turned to face the prosecution, his gaze steady. "Where is the concrete evidence? Where are the fingerprints on the cash register or the stolen items found in Marcus's possession? There are none because my client is innocent. What we have here is a tragic misunderstanding exacerbated by preconceived notions about race and youth. Let us not allow fear and prejudice to dictate the outcome of this trial." The courtroom fell silent as Mr. Thompson returned to his seat, leaving his words to hang heavy in the air. Marcus felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, buoyed by his attorney's unwavering defense. Yet the battle was far from over. Over the next few days, the prosecution called several witnesses to the stand, including Mr. Miller, the store owner, and a passerby who claimed to have seen Marcus lingering suspiciously near the shop. Under cross-examination, however, cracks began to appear in their testimonies. Mr. Thompson skillfully dismantled their accounts, pointing out inconsistencies in timelines and descriptions. When asked to identify Marcus definitively, the passerby hesitated, admitting that the hoodie had obscured most of the individual's features, making positive identification impossible. Meanwhile, the defense presented its own witnesses, starting with Ms. Alvarez, Marcus's homeroom teacher. Her testimony was heartfelt and unequivocal. "Marcus is one of the most responsible students I've ever had the privilege to teach," she declared, her voice ringing with sincerity. "On the day in question, he was present in my class until dismissal. Any suggestion that he left early is categorically false." Next, Evelyn took the stand, her frail frame belying the strength in her voice. She recounted Marcus's daily routine, emphasizing his dedication to helping her at home and his commitment to staying out of trouble. "My grandson is a good boy," she said, tears glistening in her eyes, but her tone unwavering. "He has been raised to respect others and uphold the law. To accuse him of theft is to disregard everything he stands for." As the trial progressed, the tension in the courtroom grew palpable. Each piece of evidence scrutinized, each argument dissected, added layers of complexity to the proceedings. Marcus sat rigidly, aware that the stakes were higher than ever. The prosecution continued to push their narrative of reasonable doubt, while the defense fought tirelessly to expose its flaws. In the midst of it all, Marcus clung to the belief that truth would ultimately prevail, but the path to vindication remained fraught with uncertainty. On the final day of the trial, the courtroom was packed to capacity, with spectators craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. The air was thick with anticipation as Marcus stood to deliver his closing statement, guided by Mr. Thompson's steady encouragement. Though his heart raced and his palms were slick with sweat, Marcus summoned every ounce of courage instilled in him by his grandmother. This was his moment to speak his truth, to confront the accusations head-on, and to remind everyone present of the humanity behind the headline. "Your Honor, members of the jury," Marcus began, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "I am standing here today not because I did something wrong, but because I want you to see me, to really see me. I'm just a kid who goes to school, helps his grandma, and tries to do the right thing even when it's hard. I didn't steal from Mr. Miller's store because I don't need to. My grandma taught me that we might not have much, but what we do have is honesty and pride." He paused, taking a deep breath as all eyes remained fixed on him. "Yes, I was wearing a red hoodie that day, but so are plenty of other kids in my school. Yes, I walked past the store, but I didn't go inside. And yes, I stopped when Officer Daniels told me to, because I knew I had nothing to hide. But instead of listening to me, instead of looking for real evidence, they decided I was guilty before giving me a chance to prove otherwise." His voice cracked slightly as emotion surged within him, but he pressed on, undeterred. "Being accused of something I didn't do hurts more than anything I've ever experienced. It makes me feel like no matter how hard I try, no matter how good I am, people will always judge me based on what I look like instead of who I am. That's not fair, not to me and not to anyone else who has ever been treated this way." The room was utterly silent, save for the faint rustle of papers as Marcus's words hung in the air, resonating deeply with those who dared to listen. He locked eyes with the jurors one by one, willing them to see beyond the stereotypes, to recognize the boy beneath the accusation. "All I ask is that you look at the facts, not assumptions, not guesses, but facts. There's no proof that I took anything because I didn't. Please don't let fear or prejudice decide my future. Give me the chance to keep doing what I've always done, living my life with integrity." As Marcus finished speaking, a collective exhale seemed to ripple through the courtroom. Even the prosecutor, Ms. Carter, appeared momentarily taken aback by the raw honesty and vulnerability emanating from the young boy before her. Mr. Thompson placed a supportive hand on Marcus's shoulder as he returned to his seat, his expression a mixture of pride and relief. The jury deliberations lasted longer than expected, stretching into the late afternoon. Tension mounted with each passing hour, as Marcus and Evelyn sat side by side, holding hands tightly. Finally, the foreperson emerged, clutching the verdict form, her face unreadable. As the judge instructed the court to rise, Marcus felt his knees weaken, bracing himself for whatever came next. "In the matter of the state versus Marcus Johnson," the foreperson announced, her voice steady and clear, "we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." A gasp rippled through the room, followed by murmurs of disbelief and applause. Marcus blinked rapidly, tears streaming down his face as the weight of the verdict sank in. Not guilty. The words echoed in his mind like a lifeline, pulling him back from the brink of despair. Beside him, Evelyn sobbed openly, clutching him in a fierce embrace, while Mr. Thompson beamed, shaking his hand vigorously. For Marcus and Evelyn, life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, though it was forever altered by the trial. Strangers approached them in grocery stores and on sidewalks, offering words of encouragement or sharing their own stories of discrimination and survival. At first, Marcus found the attention overwhelming, but over time he grew more comfortable embracing his role as an advocate for change. With Mr. Thompson's guidance, he began speaking at local events, recounting his experience and urging others to challenge assumptions and demand accountability. Evelyn, too, emerged transformed by the ordeal, her quiet strength blossoming into activism. She joined forces with community leaders to establish a mentorship program for young people of color, pairing them with adults who could provide guidance and support. "If we don't lift each other up," she often said, "who will?" Her efforts earned her recognition as a pillar of the community, her wisdom sought after by neighbors and officials alike. As months passed, the legal system itself showed signs of introspection, albeit cautiously. Officer Daniels transferred to a different precinct, citing personal reasons, though rumors suggested dissatisfaction with the scrutiny following the trial. Detective Harris remained, but adopted a markedly softer approach in interactions with youth. acknowledging privately that Marcus's case had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about implicit bias. Meanwhile, calls for transparency and reform gained momentum, leading to policy changes including mandatory body cameras for officers and independent oversight committees to review complaints of misconduct. On a broader scale, Marcus's story ignited a national dialogue, prompting lawmakers to revisit legislation addressing racial disparities in policing and sentencing. Advocacy groups seized the momentum, pushing for comprehensive reforms, while educators integrated lessons on civil rights and social justice into classrooms, ensuring that future generations would inherit tools to dismantle systemic inequities. For Marcus, the journey was far from over. Though he cherished moments of peace, like tending to the garden with Evelyn or losing himself in books borrowed from the library, he carried with him the knowledge that his voice mattered. He understood now more than ever that standing up for oneself wasn't merely an act of defiance. It was an affirmation of humanity, a declaration that no one should be reduced to a stereotype or dismissed without consideration. And so as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over Hopeville, Marcus stood on the porch of their modest home, gazing out at the world he had helped reshape, if only slightly. The road ahead remained uncertain, fraught with challenges yet to be faced, but he faced it with renewed purpose. After all, he had learned that truth, when wielded with courage and conviction, could move mountains, and sometimes even hearts. As we bring this unforgettable chapter of Marcus's story to a close, we invite you to reflect on the profound lessons it offers. Courage, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice are not just ideals. They are actions that can transform lives and communities. At One Storyteller, we believe in the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience and inspire meaningful change. If this tale touched your heart and sparked a desire for more stories that challenge perspectives and celebrate resilience, then don't miss out on what comes next. Subscribe to our channel today and become part of a growing community dedicated to exploring the extraordinary within the ordinary. Whether it's tales of triumph against adversity, heartwarming acts of kindness, or journeys of self-discovery, each story is crafted to leave you inspired and yearning for more. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and share this video with friends and family, because stories like Marcus's deserve to be heard far and wide.